Hey, Crackalactica here, aka Crack. So what we got here is a little bit of a gun review. I don't do these very often. I did one for the Glock 25 back on my old YouTube channel before it got blasted. But this one, I feel like I need to do it because it needs to be, people have been talking really positive about this gun, and it's been getting great reviews from all the big gun tubers. And from what and they're gun tubers I trust. They give a fair stake. If something's screwed up about a gun, they tell you. They've been running this gun with all kinds of different ammo right out of the box, sometimes cleaned, sometimes not cleaned, whatever, but they've been having no problems with this freaking gun. Everybody talking its praises for its soft recoil and yada yada yada. Good trigger accuracy, all that kind of stuff. And what we're talking about is the new Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0, which frankly to me looks more like they should have called it the mini shield or something, doesn't it? As it doesn't look anything like the old Bodyguard. I will insert a picture of the old Bodyguard 1.0, which I've never owned one or shot one and had no desire to. I will insert a picture of one at the end of the video for reference. Alright, so there you go. Now this is the actual Smith & Wesson Shield. This is a Shield 2.0, the 9mm version, and you can see the size differential between the Bodyguard and an actual shield. Alright, so, and they've done a lot of things, like look at all those serrations they've put in the slide and everything. So the sights are different. Now my shield came factory with night sights, but there is factory night sights on all the Bodyguards. The front sight post is factory night sight. So there you go. Now let's get this out of the way. See, empty. All right. So you got a tritium sight and blacked out rear. They're kind of extra wide for, I guess, better sight acquisition in a hurry at close-up targets, which is what this gun is intended for. But all right, I will say I took this to the range. I put 140 rounds through it. Yeah, I was very disappointed. Now I will grant them this, for a gun this small, and it's a really small gun, like when you see somebody holding it in a YouTube video, it doesn't convey to you how small this gun is compared to other guns you may have experience with, even in the 380. So it's it is a tiny little gun, and you would think a tiny lightweight gun, it only weighs like 10 ounces or something. You would think a tiny little 380 gun would recoil like a mother, like most tiny 380s do, just because, not because it's a particularly powerful round, it certainly isn't, but because they put that round in teeny tiny little guns that have no weight to them. But this thing is very soft recoiling. It was, let's see here, I'm trying to think of other tiny 380s that I've fired. Okay, I thought the Walther PPKS was harsh recoiling. That's a little bit bigger gun than this, but it's a very harsh recoiling gun compared to this thing. It certainly is. I've also fired the Ruger LCP in a tiny 380, and that was a pretty snappy thing. Not violently snappy, but snappy. Now I have, in the last couple of years, I've also fired a few magazines through a Jimenez Arms, aka Jennings 380, one of those 90s brick kind of guns, and those are pretty snappy and harsh to handle. In 380, those are not fun to shoot. So there's that. See what other 380s. Okay, I got experience with. Okay, The Beretta 84 I have experience with, and although not particularly snappy, it can be pretty snappy. Especially for the size gun it is. The Beretta 84 is a compact, firearm that is like, it's about, it's getting close to full size Beretta size. Like almost like a Beretta compact. I mean, that's a double stack 13 round, almost full size pistol, the Beretta 84, and it's snappier and more uncomfortable to shoot than this thing. And another gun that's similar to the Beretta 84, kind of modeled after it, but is beefier and chunkier, and not made anymore, unfortunately, is the Taurus PT58. And all these guns that I'm mentioning, I will put a picture at the end of the video for reference so people can see them, what they are. But yeah, I used to have a PT58 back in the day, and that was a very pleasant shooting 380. It was bigger, heavier, chunkier than the Beretta 84 that it was based on, supposedly. It was more like they took a compact 9mm and just rechambered it in 380 rather than fully copying the Beretta 84 series at Taurus with that gun. And other 380s I got experience with. See here. Yeah, I've also fired and owned for a while the Glock 28, which is like a Glock 26 chambered in 380, and that was a very pleasant shooting firearm. That was at the time I fired it, it was the softest shooting 380 I had ever experienced. Softer shooting than this thing, that's for sure. And also the Glock 25. I have one of those, and that is basically a Glock 19, almost a full-size, basically a full-size pistol, chambered in 380, and it is a very, very soft shooter, and much softer than this. But this is still pretty soft shooting. The only other tiny 380 I would say that is softer shooting than this is the Kimber Micro. I had one of those for a little while, and I gotta say, the first time I fired it, I was shocked at how mild the recoil was on such a tiny little 380 as the Kimber Micro, and I ended up buying it from the shop that I was working in, because I test fired it in the shop's test fire barrel, and I was like, wow, that was nice, and I ended up buying it, and I kept that for a while as a carry piece. Yeah, I mean, I got this with high hopes, hoping that, like, maybe I can use this as a little tiny gun to squirrel away if I need a little tiny gun, but my experience was bad. Let me tell you what happened. So I had a failure to feed on almost every magazine, and I'm not talking. And sometimes it would happen in the middle of the magazine, sometimes multiple times during a magazine, and chambering around initially was problematic with almost every magazine. And like I said, I fired 140 rounds. Some of the magazines were filled to capacity, and the magazine capacities are 10 and 12 rounds. Most of the magazines I was only putting in like 5, 6, 7 rounds in a magazine. But still, and it didn't matter whether I was pulling the slide back, like that, or if I was, letting the slide release go. It didn't matter. So it was still, failure to feed. It would get hung up, partially hung up, and then I'd have to hit the back of the slide to get it to go in the battery. And sometimes I could drill through several rounds at a time. It always locked back on the empty mag, I'll give it that. I had one failure to extract a spent casing, and I wasn't the only one that had problems with it. The range officer at the range I was at recognized the gun I was shooting, and was curious about it because he'd seen it on YouTube also. He goes, "Hey, is that the Bodyguard 2.0?" I was like, "Yeah, you wanna run a magazine through it?" And he's all like, "Shit, yeah." And so I loaded up a magazine, and he had the same kind of problems I did. It was just, and on one of the magazines, it must have been just me screwing up, because a lot of the YouTubers that have been, firing this gun, they describe how, it doesn't have the slide bite you would expect from a little tiny gun like this. because of this beaver tail back here, which is a very good beaver tail. I did get slide bite. I don't know if anybody can see that. I got some slide bite, but you probably can't see it. But it you know, that was just one magazine. I was probably me screwing something up in the hold of the gun. But yeah, as many stoppages as I mean, it was a struggle to get through that 140 rounds. And I was thinking, maybe this is a break-in issue. How many rounds do I need to break it? You know, usually if there is a break-in issue with a major manufacturer, quality semi-automatic pistol, it's usually not that many rounds to get through the break-in, part. It's like usually, within 100 rounds easily. Usually much less, if there is. There seldom is with modern major manufacturer pistols. Usually there's no break-in period, and that includes Smith & Wesson, Glock. Matter of fact, I have in my Shield Plus and my Shield, both, I have both of those. When they were brand, I ran 6 or 7 magazines through each of those right off the bat, with the only thing I had done to them was add a little bit of oil to the parts that, usually you oil on a semi-auto. And then just ran them right out of the box, just with a little bit of oil added, and had no issues with various and sundry types of ammo in those. And this one, I don't think the problem is the ammo. All right, let me show you the ammo I got here. I ran 2 boxes, so total of 40 rounds of this Ammo Inc. 90 grain jacketed hollow point. I ran 2 boxes of this stuff for 40 rounds of that. I ran a 50 round box of Fiocchi 95 grain full metal jacket. Such on YouTube, I've seen him run just thousands and tens of thousands of rounds of 380 in various pistols he's reviewed of this exact same ammo, because Fiocchi is his ammo sponsor. And I've used this several times before. In other pistols, and never had a problem with it. And I've never had a problem with Fiocchi in other calibers and stuff. So it's like, Fiocchi's a good, good ammo. And I've never had problems with Ammo Inc. either. People talk shit on Ammo Inc. or whatever, but I've never had any problems with their ammo. So I'm thinking it's not the ammo that was the problem. And one thing I did run is, I don't know what the hell this shit is. I picked this up at AIM Surplus the other day. It's some kind of old military surplus, probably from the Middle East. It was, 50 round box, as you can see, for $15 of jacketed hollow point. The hollow points looked weird. The hollow points themselves weren't very deep. There was an exposed lead tip that they kind of more reminded me of a almost like a soft point, and the lead was kind of had corroded. So tell me that this stuff was old. It's probably some old Egyptian or Turkish surplus or whatever, something from the Middle East or Pakistan or wherever the fuck it came from. But when it ran good. But it was once again, didn't matter which of these ammos I used. It didn't matter which one. I was having the same problems with failure to feed, particularly off of loading a new magazine. And like I said, it didn't matter if I was doing slingshot or if I was doing the old slide release. This didn't work any better than going that. I mean, same. I mean, it was hanging up, and several times during mid magazine, I was getting hang-ups too, and having to tap it in the battery and stuff. And like I said, the range officer at the range I was going to, he only ran one 10 round magazine, and he was having problems too. But the gun, yeah, as advertised, is very mild recoiling. The only teeny tiny 380 I've experienced that has a milder recoil is the Kimber Micro. This has a more pleasant recoil than a much larger pistols like the Beretta 84 or the the PPK. Now it's nowhere near as comfy to shoot as the Glock 28 or the Glock 25, but those are much bigger, heavier duty pistols than this thing is. So of course they're going to absorb the recoil better. So the Taurus PT58 is also softer shooting than this, but once again, that's pretty much a full-size pistol. Yeah, for its size category, it is, you know, very soft shooting. And I can't explain why it wasn't working for me. I mean, I was doing proper grip and all that. You know, I was making sure, you know, I wasn't limp wristing it or anything like that. I mean, I was, you know, holding the gun properly, and it just didn't, you know, and you know, limp wristing doesn't really factor into it when you're chambering around off of the slide release. Now does it? So, you know, the limp wristing, I'm going to discount that as any kind of factor. This gun was just a lemon. So, yeah, a lot of people are having great experiences with these, but buyer beware, you might get a lemon. I know I'm not keeping this. So, there you go. This is the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 2.0, and it's a nice looking pistol. You know, like I said, instead of the Bodyguard, they should have called it the Mini Shield or something, because it doesn't look anything like the old Bodyguard. It looks like a shield. It's like Honey, I Shrunk the Shield. It's like you know, it's like they just took a Shield Plus basically and just shrunk it. But that's that. Yeah. Cleaned up easy and nice. It breaks down just like, you know, the other Shield models, so no issues there. Anyway, that's it. Like I said, I will put photos at the end of this video for reference of all the other guns I mentioned.